on this edition of In the Life.
Gays and lesbians on the move. Taking a cruise, taking a plane, or taking a vacation in the Pacific.
Sexuality and all those phobias, that doesn't even come into play here.
Plus lesbians rebuilding women's lives in Nicaragua. All this and more on In the Life, America's lesbian and gay cultural news magazine.
Would love to have a relationship.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by Peter Goldfarb, in memory of Helen Goldfarb, Michael A. Leppin, Rick Weiland, the Lily Auchincloss Foundation, the Gill Foundation, Richard M. and Peggy Danziger, the Michael Palm Foundation, the Mitchell Gold Company, in the hopes of eliminating all types of fear and prejudice, and In the Life members like you.
Welcome to In the Life and our travel show. Hi, I'm Katherine Linton. America is a country that is on the move. A healthy economy, a sense of adventure, and competitive markets all add up to more and more people traveling for business and for pleasure. In fact, analysts estimate that over the next few years, the number of passengers on airlines could reach 1 billion annually. And whether by plane or train, car or cruise ship, a significant portion of those Americans are gay men and lesbians. Each year, gay people pour billions of dollars into the mega-buck travel industry. And this growing consumer power has spurred a boom in the niche industry that specifically targets the gay community. Ports are calling, and faraway lands are beckoning.
Bali is not a gay party destination. It's a fantastic destination that intelligent, sensitive travelers are going to want to go to.
But it hasn't always been smooth sailing. Last year, the gay cruise industry, the fastest growing segment of gay travel, hit some rough waters. Incidents like harassment of gay tourists in the Bahamas and the Cayman Islands' refusal to allow a ship to dock with gay travelers raised questions about safety and human rights. In our first segment, Tanya Barfield has the latest on the gay cruise controversy.
The warm breeze, the open seas, and the freedom to be out in a relaxed environment makes the all-gay cruise a popular vacation choice.
This is my second gay cruise, and I'm planning the third one will be to Alaska in a few months. So three's a charm. Can't wait for that one.
Cruises in general, even mainstream, have become very, very popular. We've noticed that there's been a renaissance in the cruise industry.
As the gay market comes of age, the travel industry welcomes it with open arms. In fact, it's estimated that the gay and lesbian traveler makes up 10% of the total travel industry, or about $47 billion a year.
The image of the gay and lesbian travel consumer has changed quite dramatically, actually. They're more confident nowadays, definitely. They definitely feel more welcome in other nations, as well as in our own nation.
The International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association started 15 years ago with about 25 members, mainly gay-owned travel operators and agencies. Today, their membership is more than 2,000 and includes most of the major airlines, car rental companies, and of course, cruise lines. The key to the popularity of the all-gay cruise lies in the experience of the trip itself.
Is this a floating disco or a floating bathhouse or a floating buffed guys from West Hollywood? I don't think so. I think it's a real large spectrum of this community, minus women, which we're working on, and we're going to get more women. We'll get those women on board yet. But we are everybody.
There are plenty of cruise options for women. Olivia Cruises, formerly Olivia Records, offers a variety of cruise packages for lesbians.
The activities are directed towards women, the comedy, the music, the where we go, how many of us go there, are all based upon really what women would like to do. Or at least, I hope what women would like to do.
But it wasn't always smooth sailing for gay and lesbian cruise operators. After all, these companies don't own the boats they sail on.
We've dealt with cruise lines that 12 years ago would not let us on their ships because they were afraid that their officers and crew would not want lesbians and gays on their ship. We're now on those cruise lines.
Once they gained admission, the all-gay tour operators began filling more and more boats. Cruises provided an ideal vacation where the stresses of a homophobic society could be left at the dock. When pulling into distant ports, however, a tour operator has the delicate job of negotiating with the host country, a sort of unofficial ambassador for the queer nation.
We know it's a conservative country, and we respect that. And we're here as tourists. And whenever you go into a country as a tourist, you should respect the local customs and the local laws, and we do.
Over the years, there have been isolated anti-gay incidents involving cruises, but the most publicized was in January 1998, when the Cayman Islands refused to allow an Atlantis cruise ship to dock.
It is an inherent human right to travel as you wish, and to have a country establish a policy that is unwelcoming of gay people, cannot stand.
At the time, the Human Rights Campaign and many others in the gay community were quick to respond. We asked HRC to explain where the situation stands today.
We decided an action plan based on the fact that the British government, in our view, held the most influence with the Cayman Island government, and we also wanted to pursue a strategy with the U.S. government, applying as much pressure on them as possible. We have attempted to contact the Cayman government, including their tourism representation here in the U.S., and we get referred to the Minister of Tourism, which of course refuses to return our calls. So we did, in fact, attempt to dialogue with the government before escalating our concern.
The Cayman Islands government stands by its policy of barring gay travelers from its shores. Meanwhile, religious hecklers continue to greet gay travelers in many places where they dock. Reports from the Bahamas, Belize, and Costa Rica have described anti-gay harassment, some more threatening than others.
But God wanted, and God says that is all.
When we were there was a demonstration by a couple of hundred local Bahamians, and it was the day after Easter, so we were there when everyone was off as well. It was all these things that came together, and at one point they came onto the pier to our ship and started to, yell slogans at us, and then started to sing hymns. The women who were still on board sang back to them the same hymns because they knew the hymns. So this sort of took the energy out of the demonstration.
It remains to be seen what impact, if any, these events will have on vacationers.
I think that the gay and lesbian consumer has not been affected when they're traveling by cruises by the negativity that has occurred in some of the islands. Reason being is that most of them already expect something like that. Most of them, especially when they're traveling through third world nations, know to a degree that they may not be welcome like they would be in the United States.
Activists, however, note that gay travelers from other countries have met with similar resistance when trying to enter the U.S.
We expect that people can come to the United States the same way that we expect that people can go to the Cayman Islands, and that expectation is actually not true. Up until the early 1990s, coming into the U.S. for a gay person, even as a tourist, was forbidden by law. Homosexuality was considered a sexual perversion. The United States has a policy that bars HIV-positive immigrants or tourists from coming into the country. And the United States has a policy which is not written anywhere. It's not written, but whereby gay and lesbian tourists have a harder time getting a visa.
The anti-gay cruise incidents put an international spotlight on the Caribbean. As a result, some potentially friendly nations have made themselves visible.
The cruises chartering company Atlantis Events through its president, Rich Campbell, says that by accepting the gay cruise, Belize has rightly positioned itself as a country willing to accept all tourists.
And in the Bahamas, the government made an official apology to Olivia Cruises.
What they were interested in doing was letting us know and letting the public know that they were in support of gays and lesbians coming to the Bahamas, that they believed that it was a civil rights issue, that they wanted to profusely apologize.
Several other island nations that consider themselves gay-friendly have courted the association, and so as a result, it actually became a pretty good thing for us because there are several other nations down there that definitely want the gay and lesbian dollar.
We are asking for our human rights because we deserve them, because they are ours, not because we are tourists, not because we are rich, and not because we can travel. It's because they are our rights and we deserve them.
You have been blessed through some miracle of nature with a sexual interest in men. I would love to have a relationship with a stunted and immature man. It sounds marvelous. You know what I can't understand is how you managed to be queer. Really, just not fair. I should have been queer. You're totally ungrateful.
Two organizations working together to monitor and get the word out about treatment of gay travelers abroad are the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association and the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association. To find the links to these and other organizations working in this area, go to the In the Life website at inthelifetv.org. I'm David Marshall Grant, and you are watching In the Life.
There are some places in the world that very much welcome gay business, like a tiny island that's part of the Indonesian archipelago called Bali. Last March, I was one of 8 journalists from the gay media who were invited on an all-expense-paid trip to Bali. It was a place that I'd always wanted to go, so it was a dream opportunity. In fact, I was so excited about the trip that it wasn't until I got on the plane that I began to ask myself, what's gay about Bali, and why is Bali courting gay travelers? I'll attempt to answer those questions as I retrace my Balinese adventure. Our trip began last March with a flight on our host airline, Cathay Pacific. It was an extremely long flight, so I had plenty of time to ask myself why 8 gay journalists were being given such an opportunity. We arrived 28 hours later, only to get on a bus for another hour and a half, till we reached our final destination, the artistic center of Bali, Ubud. I was definitely tired. Well, I just traveled 30 hours, and I hope we find something gay here. I was also grumpy, but I couldn't stay that way for long. After all, tropical views, outdoor living rooms, and personal plunge pools are perks that don't come every day. Neither do lavish breakfasts, where our host from Cathay Pacific explained to me why we'd been invited.
Really, Katherine, what we've done is we've taken a look at expanding a whole bunch of different vertical markets, and one of the ones that we knew that we hadn't tapped into yet was the gay and lesbian marketplace. So we went ahead, discussed it back at the office, agreed that it was a marketplace that we hadn't tapped, that gay and lesbian travelers definitely met the profile of the people we were looking for to travel on our airline, and it was a question simply then of moving forward with the trip.
The luxury hotel chain, the Four Seasons, joined up with Cathay Pacific for the same reasons.
Any group of business we're interested in entertaining, you know, it's like, it just makes good business sense. You know, why do anything otherwise?
And this began to make perfect sense to me, especially given the times. Bali is an island that over the past few decades had come to depend more and more heavily on tourism. But Bali was suffering from a depressed Asian economy and political upheavals in other parts of Indonesia that were keeping tourists away. So we represented a new and important niche market. Understanding that, I still wondered as gay journalists if we were supposed to find gay Bali. If so, it wasn't easy.
Very good.
The elephant ride they sent us on didn't seem like a gay event. Neither did the White River rafting. The Snake Man didn't seem gay, or the sacred white cows. But finally, we found one thing that was very gay, a drag show in Kuta. And of course, all my favorite singers were there. Whitney, Leanne, and Dolly, singing a Captain and Tennille song. This was a gay bar like so many gay bars. In fact, aside from the bamboo roof and one very traditional Balinese dance, I could have been anywhere. But I wasn't anywhere. I was in Bali. And that, explains Gretchen Kelly, is exactly the point.
Bali is not a gay party destination. It's not a place where, it's not Australia, it's not Sydney, it's not specifically a gay destination. It's a fantastic destination that intelligent, sensitive travelers are going to want to go to.
So while I was looking for what was specifically gay about Bali, I was missing what was unique to Bali. For one, cultural expression as I had never seen before. Performance, art, and music seemed to be everywhere. Yet the most visible aspect of Balinese culture is their religion, Bali Hindu, known officially as Agamu Hindu. And while I couldn't pretend to understand everything about the rituals and public gatherings I witnessed, I was beginning to understand one thing. It is the Bali Hindu religion that helps foster an open and tolerant society. A lesbian couple I met who live in Bali and recently had their commitment ceremony there explained why this is.
The beauty of the religion here is that people do not judge on their own. They believe that you'll be judged later in the next life with karma, and that the most important thing in this life is to believe in God, to do well by your friends and family, to care for nature, and just be a good person. So sexuality and all those phobias, that doesn't even come into play here.
I later understood that it's not that the Balinese embrace homosexuality, they just don't believe in denigrating any living thing.
Of course, you can have your personal judgment as long as you don't really extremely put something aside or corner somebody or see this minority, if you call it minority, and you don't want to look at it. And the most important thing for one is how to cope with the situation. Because again, nothing you can do about it, you know? And then why you talk about it so negatively? If you want to talk it negatively, you better just keep your mouth shut.
This live and let live concept was genuine and uniquely Balinese. It was, in fact, the thing we all wished we could take home with us. So by the end of our trip, I knew why I would recommend Bali to anyone I knew, gay or straight, because of the people and the culture. Because Bali is like no other place I'd ever been. Not just countries, but companies are waking up to the formidable clout of the gay and lesbian market. And as we just saw with Cathay Pacific, the airline industry is no exception. They're beginning to recognize a consumer base that they'd never targeted before. Paul Mueller reports from Atlanta on 3 of the nation's largest airlines and tells us about some friendly skies, but also about some turbulence ahead.
Imagine your dream vacation. You and your partner lying on a white sandy beach on a Mediterranean isle. Or how about skiing down the powder-packed slopes of the Swiss Alps? Now that some U.S. airlines are cashing in on the lucrative gay and lesbian travel dollar, gays and lesbians are reaping the benefits. customized tour packages sponsored by major U.S. airlines. But some still experience insensitivity and even discrimination when taking to the not-so-friendly skies.
Kirby Frank is a computer consultant living in Atlanta, traveling frequently for both business and pleasure. Last year alone, he logged nearly 1 million frequent flyer miles on Delta, his airline of choice. One day while surfing the web, he discovered Delta advertised a partnership with sandals.
And it sounded like a great vacation package, and then, I started looking through just to see what it all involved, and came across the wording that said that, that it was for, heterosexuals only. So I was stunned. I was taken aback. I'm like, wait a second. I'm on the Expedia website, and I see this wording that says, basically, I can't, even if I won the contest, or the sweepstakes, I wouldn't be able to get the prize.
Delta refused to comment on Kirby Frank, but regarding the company's relationship with sandals, said this. Delta Airlines strictly prohibits discrimination of any kind in the workplace or on Delta flights. While we do not agree with any form of discrimination, Delta cannot dictate the business practices of other companies that are included as part of a vacation package sold by an independent tour operator.
As competitive as the airline industry is today, I can't understand why an airline would suggest, hey, you know what? We're not sure we really want your business. Well, that's not true. We really want your business, but just not in this part of our business, We gladly will take your money, but we're happy to discriminate against you on this particular thing.
Delta sent Frank a $50 travel certificate. Frank calls it a smack in the face.
I spend $25,000 a year on Delta Airlines, and they're going to send me $50 to try and buy me off? Don't think so.
But further investigation shows that many airlines have relationships with sandals. So where does this leave gay and lesbian travelers?
Even though Delta has made no identifiable efforts to attract gay and lesbian consumers, another airline, known for being something special in the air, has taken off in its efforts to land the gay and lesbian travel dollar. American Airlines was the first major airline to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation. It was also the first airline to initiate and sanction a gay and lesbian employee group. American Airlines' efforts to reach the gay and lesbian community is more than just selling tickets.
Gay people need to look at who is really out there supporting the community and giving to the community, and we're that airline.
Last year alone, American earned $177 million in revenue from the gay and lesbian market. 5 years after it started marketing to the gay community, American is also the official airline for the human rights campaign, GLAAD and PFLAG.
Where the fares are competitive and the gay and lesbian market, if they know, which many of them don't know, that American has been in the market and contributing in the market for the last 5 years, most of the time we'll take American Airlines because of what we do for the community.
But American has not always been the gay and lesbian flyers' favorite airline. 5 years ago, an American crew ordered the pillows taken off a plane carrying gay men and lesbians from a rally in Washington, D.C., an action which put American in a precarious situation.
But American also turned around and became one of the most proactive in terms of dealing with the lesbian and gay community, supporting gay organizations, and going after the gay and lesbian market.
And American has constantly drawn criticism from pro-family groups and the religious right. But even with the threat of a nationwide boycott looming, American hasn't given in.
It's definitely in American Airlines' own best interest to continue to support the gay and lesbian community and organizations, as well as targeting the gay market. I think they found that it's in their own best interest as well, otherwise they would not be doing it to such an extent.
We have come the furthest and gone the longest. We're the first Fortune 100 company to have a whole department dedicated to the gay and lesbian market.
In a step towards offering domestic partner benefits, American offers pass privileges and bereavement fares for the partners of its employees.
One important point, though, American Airlines doesn't offer domestic partner benefits to its employees, an issue which is currently pitting the #1 U.S. airline with the city by the Bay. United is now suing the city of San Francisco to overturn its equal benefits ordinance, which prohibits companies that do business with the city from discriminating in the benefits offered domestic partners.
Since United was the first airline whose lease at the airport came up for renewal, It's the first to contest the ordinance.
United Airlines is basically failing to give equal pay for equal work. We know that benefits can be up to 40% of an employee's total compensation package. Yet United, rather than do the right thing and treat their lesbian and gay employees fairly and give equal benefits, has decided instead to sue. And they're spending more money on the lawsuit than what it would cost them to comply with the law.
United and 23 other airlines, including American and Delta, are members of the Air Transport Association and argue that a city cannot regulate a national industry.
The fact that United Airlines is the first one to come up against this ordinance with San Francisco, it makes it seem at first glance like it's the only carrier that's not offering domestic partnership benefits to its employees, when really no U.S. carriers do. None of the major carriers offer it.
And remember Kirby Frank's beef with Sandals Resorts and their partnership with Delta and other airlines? Well, American and United are two of them.
Either you want my business or you don't want my business. Why don't you just tell me which it is?
Well, I wrote the most fabulous story ever told for one reason only, to get on In the Life. No, this play was inspired by that Christian fundamentalist remark that God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and I thought, well, what if God did?
I have enslaved hundreds of thousands of homosexuals to build my pyramid. Oh, look at them all, just sitting there, criticizing.
For more about the stories you see on In the Life, we invite you to check out a fabulous resource for information, reaction, and personal insight, Our Viewers. Go online and surf your way to In the Life's discussion forum at inthelifetv.org. There you can take part in a discussion about the issues raised tonight on this program. This is Paul Rudnick for In the Life.
Still to come on In the Life.
The documentary hit Rock the Boat, moving audiences with its chronicle of HIV-positive men on a trans-Pacific boat race. And deaf gays and lesbians fight ignorance and invisibility about their unique culture. But first...
So far in this program, we focused on travel, primarily for vacation or for leisure. In our next segment, we follow some women, many of whom are lesbians, who are on the road for humanitarian reasons. Last year, Hurricane Mitch devastated much of Central America, killing thousands of people and destroying millions of dollars worth of property. Nicaragua was one of the countries hard hit by Mitch and is now receiving financial aid to help it rebuild. But in the small town of Condega, there are some women who have been left homeless who don't qualify for assistance. Two women's groups, though, are transcending language, cultural, and national boundaries to help these women rebuild their homes while building coalitions.
My name is Margarita Suarez, and I started the Condega Homemakers Project, which is sending women's building brigades to Nicaragua. We're going down to Nicaragua to help a group called La Asociación Colectivo de Mujeres Constructoras, which means the collective association of women construction workers. They teach courses in carpentry, ironwork, and building construction. We've gotten a lot of support from the gay and lesbian community, and I think that's really interesting because we didn't start the group as a lesbian group. The leadership of the group is lesbian. I identify as lesbian, and a lot of my connections are through the lesbian community. Getting the gay and lesbian community to support this project is important because I think it's just really important for people who are committed to struggle to realize that the struggle is really grand, and there are ways in which our struggles here in the United States pale in comparison to a natural disaster leaving, killing 10,000 people and leaving thousands and thousands of people homeless in Nicaragua. So it's a way to channel our energies and find a connection between us and the women in Condega.
Bueno, en la década de los 80, ¿verdad? Estuvo aquí una brigada de Estados
Well,
Unidos.
in the 1980s, an American brigade came to build a school.
En ese periodo, esa brigada integró
To help them build that school, they recruited local women, just like we do now.
mujeres de la localidad para hacer la escuela. Yo soy lesbiana.
I'm a lesbian. To this day, we owe the infrastructure of our group to that network of lesbian women. Our contact with lesbian women has allowed us to form an international network of volunteers who support this project unconditionally.
Dan su apoyo incondicional.
As far as the objective of our
En cuanto a
group,
los objetivos que tenemos como grupo, como objetivo lo tenemos de la siguiente.
we state our objective like this: to contribute to diminish the lack of gender equality in the field of labor.
Para la autoestima de una mujer es muy importante.
For a woman's self-esteem, it is very important for her to look back and note what she has accomplished. It's not enough that she has a new piece of furniture, but that she be proud to have made it herself.
Ella lo hizo.
Well, being here during the hurricane was very scary. We heard there was going to be a hurricane passing through Honduras. We were told that it wasn't going to affect Nicaragua, or the rain that we were having was because of this hurricane, so we were just on the tail end of it. And then it was one Wednesday morning, we woke up and the alarms had already gone off, or the church bells had already gone off. It was a whole block that was washed away.
¿Y cuántas casas estuvieron aquí?
Nosotros contamos como ciento y pico por todas.
People were just staying in their houses because they just didn't believe that they would have to get out, and they didn't want to get out, because if they left their houses, that would mean that they were kind of accepting the fact that they might be washed away with all their things.
Fue algo terrible.
It was horrible. We never expected such destruction. We were afraid when the storm began, and we asked God to please protect us. My house was here, where we are standing now. It was 10 yards wide by 15 yards long. It had a big living room, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a nice bathroom. I had lived here for 20 years. Now that Mitch has left me homeless, I'm very depressed because I'd never been without a place to live. I've never even had to rent. It's terrible to lose your house and be left with nothing after so many years.
Well, we, Mujeres Constructoras and the Red to Mujeres, which is a network of women, are hoping to build 25 houses. That's our aim. That's what we have the funding for at the moment. We've been playing with all the budget and trying to see if we can maybe build more in the future, or maybe if bits more money come in, then we can build more houses. And the Brigadistas, they've got their own project and they're applying for funding.
We want to build 25 or 30 houses. We need to get $3,500 each for the houses, because that's how much the town determined the house would cost. We need to find women to come and help build the houses.
Seeing the devastation, just first seeing, laying eyes on the devastation from the hurricane was pretty profound.
As gay men and lesbians, or as queer people in the society, we're often fighting against the status quo. We're trying to make conditions better, make life easier for people.
I think all the battles are connected. I think there's no such thing as separating them out. I think that the only way that any of these particular groups really makes change in the world is when we see those connections and when we work with one another.
I am very grateful to both organizations because they have both stood by me since the moment I lost my house. I have faith in God that I'm going to pass the class at the workshop, and that I'm going to remain employed there. That makes me happy because during these hard times, it is very hard to be without a job. We need work in order to move forward.
I feel so much like I have so much to learn from these women who have been through so much more than I have.
Perhaps they're going to teach us things, but we're going to teach them new things as well.
There are an awful lot of us, especially gay and lesbian people, who have plenty of energy and resources, you know, financial and otherwise, that we could be giving a lot. We could be giving so much more. And even if we're not necessarily working on things that are specifically gay and lesbian, we're still furthering our own cause by making real, sustainable, lasting change in the world. You know, I have to believe that. I've seen so much evidence of it.
Hi, I'm Wesley Snipes.
Hi, I'm Katherine Linton.
This is Petula Clark.
No, wait a minute. I'm Kate Clinton.
Pete Seeger.
David Marshall Grant. Quentin Chris.
Jason Alexander.
We're Betty. And you're watching.
You're watching.
You are watching In the Life.
In the Life.
In the Life.
Now, I think that's fabulous.
In our next segment, we excerpt a film about a group of gay men who took to the high seas for sport, for adventure, and for an affirmation of life. The documentary charts the exploits of 10 HIV-positive men who competed in a grueling 2,200-mile yacht race across the Pacific. And as Jonathan Capehart reports, for most of the crew, this was the second greatest challenge of their lives.
Have a hurricane.
Worst case scenario, we all die.
We break the mast, we end up in life rafts. No big deal.
Filmmakers and life partners Bobby Houston and Robert Hudson battled the windy Pacific, fought off a hurricane, and risked their lives in a yacht race from California to Hawaii. And they chronicled the entire journey in a new film called Rock the Boat.
Having AIDS and sailing to Hawaii is not your everyday activity.
I think I'm spiritually in tune for this, and it took me a while to accept my illness and to realize that I can go on.
This movie is about people who have HIV, and coincidentally, they're gay. It's like a World War II movie, where you get total strangers thrown into a crisis and then go out there and survive.
11 men, 2,200 miles of ocean, 10 days at sea, and a camera. Those are the ingredients that set sail in the critically acclaimed new documentary, Rock the Boat.
I was talking to a friend of mine about going sailing, and this big guy from the back jumped into the conversation and said, "Sailing? Did somebody say sailing?"
In the summer of 1997, Houston, Hudson, and a crew of 9 men living with HIV and AIDS set sail on the Survivor in the Transpac race.
This is it. We're out of here. This boat's leaving now. Transpac's probably the oldest race in California. It dates back to 1906. It races every 2 years from Los Angeles to Hawaii.
Wanted, HIV positive crew. That ought to grab them.
Putting together this team was overwhelming to me, because I had to not only go in a matter of 6 months and get a trained, seasoned Transpac yacht team, I had to get all HIV-positive sailors.
Saturday, July 5th, so that's this morning. The pharmaceuticals are everywhere evident. Pill time happens all the time.
I think about 3 weeks before we left, we finally let the Transpac Yacht Club know that this team is all HIV positive. We thought for sure they'd throw us out, but they didn't.
The race is one part of Robert Hudson's nonprofit organization called Get Challenged. It's dedicated to redefining the self-esteem of people living with HIV and AIDS.
Nobody tries to hit home, this is what you should do being HIV positive, this is what you shouldn't do. This just shows the guys being guys, going for their dreams, racing across the Pacific. So it gives a great image for the 21st century for people with AIDS. And that was my original goal, and that's why I did the whole thing.
I knew that there was a story. I had no idea what the story would be.
And there's not a team on this boat.
There is a team on this boat.
There's
Don't say
teams.
that. There's a very powerful team.
An athletic competition has a starting gun and a finish line. And in between, something happens.
We have a hurricane.
Dolores, not a hurricane yet.
People wanted to be in this race. They wanted to sail. I believe this race was keeping people alive. It was like, you gotta wanna live to live.
People are recommending him. He can't sail. He's never been on the ocean. I don't even know if he can swim.
Who knows? Maybe he'll pull somebody out of the drink, you know?
There was nobody on the boat that actually was qualified. There's a rule in the Transpac that you must have one Transpac veteran in your crew. But because of the project, that rule was waived.
We couldn't have cast a better film. We've got the dishy cook, the crazy captain, the comedic helmsman.
Everyone's just going to be so close, and it's going to be such a rewarding experience.
The thrill for me was how much people let down their guards and how much they showed inside. When you get that on film, it's really unique.
You should lighten up on your backstage pressure, too. Our master's ass.
I think you should lighten up.
You know, I read that book, The Old Man and the Sea, and he had a big hat.
Sleep deprivation was probably the most difficult negative we were working with.
Sleep becomes the biggest luxury.
I think I slept for the first time last night, about 2.5 hours over here. When I woke up, I was completely disoriented. And
people get dingy, and they get emotional.
Dingy, they get angry, testy.
You guys have so much resentment, there's resentment everywhere. And you both know that.
It's just natural. You put 11 guys on a boat, you're going to come. No, we're talking me and you.
That's not natural.
Well, John and I have been through a lot in the last 6-7 months. You know, we work to get along with each other. There's things John doesn't like about me, there's things I don't like about John. But I mean, we're not going to wrestle on the deck.
There's a moment where the crew comes to John and basically says, "What's up? Are we going to make it or not?" And John said, "Look, you know, if we break the mast, we end up in life rafts. No big deal."
The crew kind of
I'm behind the camera going, you know, it's a big deal. Life rafts is a big deal. You know, we're 1,000 miles from land.
The anxiety Bob had was he kept having this reoccurring nightmare that the boat would be sinking and everybody would be climbing into a life raft and his film would be floating away in different directions and he couldn't get it all together.
Fortunately, that never happened. Rock the Boat has been a big hit at film festivals across the country, and the New York Times called it moving and says it leaves you cheering.
For the first time in my life, I made a film that was about being gay, about being out, and what that looks like for me. And it has changed my life entirely.
Rock the Boat is now in theaters across the country and makes its television debut on HBO this summer. This is Jonathan Capehart for In the Life.
Joining the cast of Rent was an incredible experience. In Rent, there are many messages, but one that's really emphasized over and over again is that you have to love and live every moment in the fullest way you can because it's not promised to you for the next day or the next minute. I play Tom Collins in the Broadway musical Rent, and my character, as well as several others, are learning to live with HIV and AIDS. For more information about AIDS-related issues, a good first stop is the National AIDS Hotline at 1-800-342-AIDS. They can answer your questions, give you the numbers for state hotlines, or direct you to a service organization in your local area. Get the right information. Know the facts. Stay healthy. I'm Michael McElroy for In the Life.
Sometimes to explore another culture, you don't have to venture very far from home. Our final segment takes us inside the world of gay men and lesbians who are deaf. People who share a language and experience unfamiliar to most of us, yet who see that as a challenge and definitely not a handicap. Deaf lesbians and gay men were a visible part of the 1993 March on Washington, exhibiting pride in their identity and culture. Like gay men and lesbians who belong to other minority groups, deaf men and women live in more than one world, and where they feel most at home may be surprising. Bob Rourke and his partner Ed Aldrich live in Alexandria, Virginia with their dogs. They both work for the federal government, and both are in their 30s. They have one major difference, however. Bob is deaf, and Ed is hearing.
When I first met him, he didn't know how to sign at all. But his roommate's parents were deaf, so he had a TTY, a device that allows the deaf to communicate over the telephone. He talked to his roommate, and his roommate taught him some signs, some finger spelling, and how to use the TTY.
I think the first thing was I saw that he was very patient with people that were trying to communicate. So I figured, I could make an effort, and I didn't have to be perfect. So that's how I started. I learned finger spelling, and at some point when we were dating, I decided I'd take a sign language class.
We started out writing with a pen and paper. Then I wanted him to get involved in deaf culture. There were a lot of things he didn't understand, so I had to explain things like the differences in behavior. For example, tapping the shoulder for attention or using facial expressions. Sometimes I would respond to what he was saying with a facial expression, and he would interpret it to mean that I was upset, when in fact I wasn't. I just didn't understand what he was saying.
When you're tired, you're not necessarily going to be walking around with a smile on your face. And so if I'm coming around and I'm thinking about something, the drive home from work that really aggravated me, and then I turn and say to Bob something about, is it your turn to make dinner? It comes across much differently than it was intended, because facial expression is the punctuation of sign language.
Bob and Ed have considered adopting a child, but are afraid that the child could one day be taken away from them by the courts. However, their desire to expand their family led them to rescue 2 Dalmatians, deaf Dalmatians, who they've taught to understand sign language.
Being very different, I think we kind of add some kind of balance to a relationship. He has one set of strengths and I have another set of strengths. I think there's a certain amount of tension on the con side. Anytime you have different cultures involved in a relationship, it's amazing what you can do when you think something's worth it. You have to have the desire to make something work.
Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. is the only undergraduate university in the world for the deaf and hard of hearing. It was here that Candace McCullough and Sharon Ducheneau met. Candace is now back at Gallaudet working on her doctorate in clinical psychology, and Sharon works as a mental health counselor. The two live in Bethesda, Maryland, and are the mothers of a 2.5-year-old girl.
We discussed it, and we really wanted to have our own child. We discussed who the donor should be. We wanted our child to know the donor. We wanted the donor to allow our child to meet him if she wanted to. We didn't want to keep this a secret from her. We also wanted to know the donor's medical history.
Sharon and Candace were looking for a donor that would enable their child to share their unique culture.
It was important to us that the donor be a hereditary deaf person, since we would have a better chance of having a deaf child. This doesn't mean we wouldn't have wanted our child if she'd been born hearing. We would have loved her just the same. So we asked him, and he agreed, and we worked out all the details. Everything went as planned. The day our daughter was born, we felt that she was deaf. We tested her hearing by turning up the TV to a loud roar, and she remained sound asleep. She was tested at 6 weeks, and it was confirmed that she was deaf. We were thrilled.
Having Jean has brought us more out into the open about our relationship, our family. We don't want to keep this hidden. We don't want her to grow up embarrassed or ashamed about her family. It's our responsibility to let people know who we are and that we're proud of our family. This started with letting people at school know. We're lucky that all the parents were supportive and accepting of us. One of the teachers even wrote a supporting letter for us when one of us went through the adoption process. That was very nice, and we feel very accepted by the school and by the other parents.
It was important for Candace and Sharon that their daughter was born at home, surrounded by a support system of other women. Women like Jan DeLapp, Jean's godmother, who lives with them and takes care of Jean while her mothers are at work.
Some people ask me what I'll do if kids tease her about having lesbian moms. I know that may happen because kids can be cruel at times and they tease other kids about many things, like wearing glasses or having divorced parents. So I'm not worried about the teasing. I expect it will happen. But our job is to teach her how to deal with it in the right way. I think Jean will develop a gift of sensitivity to others because of being different. She'll be a good person, I hope.
Sometimes I wish my partner was deaf, so he wouldn't get up complaining about the dogs barking all night long.
I tend to be living kind of in both worlds, but I don't always experience the two issues simultaneously. It's either one or the other.
If there was a party of straight people and they were deaf, and a party of gay people but they were hearing and didn't know sign language, I would prefer the straight party. That's because I'd be able to communicate with people. At the other party, although the people were gay, I'd feel frustrated trying to communicate with the hearing people. It's because I identify first and foremost as a deaf person.
I grew up in a hearing world, struggling and feeling frustrated, trying to be a hearing person until about 7 or 8 years ago. I don't want John to go through that struggle over speech and feel incompetent. My whole childhood, I wondered what was wrong with me, why I was different. I didn't know until I entered the deaf world. Finally, I understood. It was all about communication. I was finally able to relate to others on the same level. That's what I'd been missing.
I want to say something about self-esteem. If you're told it's bad to be deaf, it's awful and very deflating to be constantly told you must be like hearing people. It's the same with gays and lesbians. If you're constantly told you must be straight and you struggle to be straight, deep down inside you don't feel good about who you really are.
From all of us at In the Life, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by Peter Goldfarb, in memory of Helen Goldfarb, Michael A. Leppin, Rick Weiland, the Lily Auchincloss Foundation, the Gill Foundation, Richard M. and Peggy Danziger, the Michael Palm Foundation, the Mitchell Gold Company, in the hopes of eliminating all types of fear and prejudice, and In the Life members like you.